Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Transformation. Today's guest is Alistair Frost, former Microsoft leader turned future ready mindset evangelist and the author behind Ready Already. Today we'll be delving into the future of work and how to anticipate our readiness for what's next. Alistair, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Lovely to be here. And also, I'm just so excited to talk about how the world is changing and how so many people are going to be obsolete in their workplace if they don't sharpen up their act.
You and me both. So let's start there then. I know you spend your time helping leaders and organizations navigate that, navigate change,
Mm,
uncertainty, and even befriend it if we can be so bold. Um, and I think particularly in today's world of AI, we both know that the human elements of change and transformation are the enabling elements of any sustainable change, which change for me today is a norm and not a project. You say it in the beginning of your book, you put life is a journey, not a destination. And so is change. It's a journey, not a destination for me. So your mission is, in fact, to give others the skill and habits they need to become, I'm going to put it in inverted commas, future ready, whatever
mhm.
that means. Can we start there then, Alistair?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and you've already alluded to, if we start with the old mindset, in your book, one of the core
mm,
ideas is what works today is already obsolete.
yeah.
And you call out our obsession with fixing what's broken instead of reimagining what's next. So, why is that so seductive but yet so dangerous for leaders, Alistair?
Well, look, there's an awful lot you picked out there. I think that the key thing for me is that, and I went from a traditional manufacturing business at Kimberly Clark, selling loo rolls and stuff like that, facial tissues, into the tech sector many years ago at Microsoft.
Mm,
And that transformation for me was extraordinary and the hardest thing I've ever done. And
mm,
it's only when I got to Microsoft I realized the folly of some of the ways that I'd started my career, which was with a mindset of if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
yeah,
If something's working, it's going great. And it was at Microsoft that Bill Gates said, today, if something works, it's obsolete. And that just shook me to the core, frankly, because
totally
I'd never
different.
thought about things that way.
No.
And I realized that what he was predicting back then, and now, of course, is a reality today, is that everything we know, do, think is already out of date because the world moves so quickly. Someone, somewhere, somehow
Mm,
has figured out a better, cheaper, faster, sexier, whatever way of doing it.
mm.
And that's I was at first I was terrified by that concept. It kind of felt like, well, so my knowledge is out of date, isn't it? Everything. But actually, I realized quite quickly it's a remarkably empowering way to look at the world, to
Yeah.
look at your business, to look at your colleagues, to look at everything and say it's all obsolete, it's all out of date. It can all be improved. And actually, my job is not to protect what we have,
Mm,
but actually to identify the one thing that I need to improve today,
mm.
and again and again and again. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, and it's a far cry from what we've been formatted to do, isn't it? Which is if it isn't broken, don't fix it, and to just do incremental change to make sure that that sort of status quo sort of stays the same. But
Mm,
like you say, the speed of change today, but also, Alistair, the way we're formatted, is it's about what you know. And we don't know that much. We have to step back from our knowledge because, as you say, it's changing
mm,
so quickly. And for me, this old mindset is the trap. And if we dig into what being already actually means in practice, can we start with the personal mission bit? Because
mm,
when I read your book, I love the idea of the personal mission, of course, but also once you've uncovered it, giving it the missing piece
mm,
of
mm.
direction, of course, which, of course,
Yes,
if you've got mission and no direction, you can just go round and round in
go the
circles,
wrong
can't
way.
you?
Absolutely.
Um, and I know you've had a few pivots on your personal
Mm,
mission that you can tell us about. Can you tell us about a
mm,
significant pivot for you and how it affected the way you became future ready?
mm. Yeah, personal mission for me. The one problem we've got with future ready mindset, I think of it as it's kind of like growth mindset, but growth mindset plus, if I may
Mm,
be so bold. It's about 20 years since Carol Dweck came up with growth mindset,
mm,
and we recognized and accepted that everybody within the limits of their physicality can develop and grow through time. With perseverance, you can learn, you can keep going. And in fact, you don't really have a choice. You've got to do that now because of the way the world is.
mm,
But the problem with that is that we're all busy and we've all get used to doing things a certain way and we build
mm,
our comfort zone through life and we get used to that's how things get done around here, all
mm,
of that stuff. So the personal mission for me is the missing piece in growth mindset. It's It's what you need to have. It's the fuel for your future. It's the thing that's going to give you the energy to get out of bed again on another rainy Monday morning and go at it again and try and not get beaten down, because it is hard to change things. It is hard to move forwards, but we have to find a reason to do that. So personal mission, very simply, is the heartfelt reason why you do the job that you do in the service of others. So what is it how does your work affect other people downstream? And it's really connecting back to those downstream consequences of your work, your daily work, and seeing that as your work, not as a list of tasks or to-do jobs and, a list of improvements. And the story that I tell in the book is about my personal mission when I arrived at Microsoft, and I was given the job of marketing for email.
I love that story.
It was like, what a ridiculous technology. I joined Microsoft looking to work on Xbox or something cool and sexy, space missions, I don't know. And they said, no, you're in charge of Outlook and Exchange Server, both of which, are hated products, let's be honest. No one likes email. And I was quite depressed. And then my personal mission came to me after I looked at the market. I started to understand it, and I realized the entire damn world runs on email. There's nobody can run it. You cannot run a business, a government, anything without email. So that's really exciting, actually. And my personal mission that I framed in my mind, rather than saying I'm the product solutions marketing lead for whatever my job title was, I started telling people I make the world better at email. And the minute I did that, I still had to do the job of selling lots of software licenses and stuff. Your job doesn't go away, but the way you look at it does. And I started to realize this is so exciting. Literally, if I do my job well, I can make the world better at email. And if 1% of email users are 1% more productive, boom, there's a productivity growth for planet Earth that nobody else is getting close to. That's amazing. Now, that was you might sort of think that story sounds kind of easy. Email at Microsoft, that's a massive company, but it relates to everybody. Everybody's job does something in the service of others. So who are those people? What are you doing? And connect to that. And the other thing that I told is this simple reframing of, I'd gone through life thinking a company gives me a job to, the company employs me to do a job. And when I was at Microsoft, that's when I realized, no, actually, if I'm going to thrive and succeed in all this change, I employ my company to give me a place where I can do amazing things.
Another paradigm
the minute
shift.
You start looking at it that way, you realize, oh, it's not me doing the company's work. It's me enabling the company to grow, but using the company as the vehicle for my brilliance. Because, I could say I make the world better at email, but that's kind of hard if I'm not in a company that does email stuff, so that's where personal mission really comes in. If you haven't got it, honestly, if all you're doing is a job and a salary and you're getting by and that's all it is, then I don't believe you'll have the energy to make the changes that you need to and to keep up for as long as you'll need to do that.
And also read chapters 4 and 5 of Alistair's book, because it will help you get there. But I think it's really interesting in terms of another paradigm shift, Alistair, of how we have to change the way we think about ourselves, about our mission, about the world. And I love the idea of your own brilliance. And I often work with leaders, and my question is, how much of your time do you spend using your own brilliance on yourself? Because if I look at the personal mission, that's what that's about. It's about not allowing yourself to remain small when you could be doing something bigger, more impactful, more exciting for you. And the personal mission sits, of course, in the center of your growth model, which the Frost growth model. I love the discussion around that, feeling a little bit arrogant, but it's not at all. So Frost being an acronym.
Yes.
For that growth cycle of follow, react, open, surprise, and tell.
Correct.
Very powerful cycle. I would like to operationalize it a little bit. If a CEO only applied one of those steps this quarter, which step would you recommend, and how would they know it's working, Alistair?
Well, as a CEO, as you say, the personal mission is in the middle of the model and it's connected to everything else, simply because as you work through the model, you'll have days when it's doesn't seem to be going right, or you get some bad feedback or whatever, and you lose your way. So you
Yeah.
just go back to your personal mission, then back to the step you're on. But really, it is a cycle, it is a process. If a CEO are doing this, I would really urge them to start having an honest conversation about that personal mission for all their staff, and why do you do the job that you do. Reconnect that. The difference, though, with personal mission, that language I use, and purpose,
Yeah.
is a lot of people take their purpose from the CEO. They say, these are my values, this is my mission. No, that's the company stuff. The brilliance of a personal mission is that everybody is different, and everybody has a different life stage, has different outlooks, and so on. When I was very young, when my son rather was very young at Microsoft, I was really passionate about internet safety for parents, to help parents keep their children safe, because I was realizing I needed to do this for my son. And that was at the time my personal mission. I was absolutely driven by that, but it evolved over time to different things. So I would say, really try to give your staff the space to and time to think about what they're doing, and the brilliance, the miracle of their work, and realizing that if they don't do a great job, somewhere, somehow, someone's life is a little bit worse off. And when you see that and you realize that, you can start putting your heart back into your work. So I would really start there, and then really, obviously, I would encourage every CEO to try to get their staff to then work through the 5 steps of the Frost model, or the Ready Already growth cycle, as I call it in the book.
Yeah, and I think it also, as the brain likes, gives frameworks and certainty, something tangible to work with when we're working with things that we're not used to working with. And that mindset's very clear. But for me, the million-dollar question is, as ever in sustainable sort of change, is how do you actually keep people with you on that ride, Alistair? So, and Ready Already, you say it doesn't just celebrate speed, it also warns against complacency, but also the human toll of waiting too long and just thinking that we won't fix what isn't broken. So what's the real price for you of sort of culturally, emotionally, for a company to truly adopt this mindset at scale? Because as an individual leader, I have my own work to do. We all do, don't we? And then how do I take my team with me? And scaling is the question I get the most. And it was my biggest challenge in the organization I worked in, is how do you scale the impact of trying to create a different paradigm?
You see, where I spend most of my days is as a keynote speaker. So I talk at events and conferences, things like that. So you do, if you are to get this new vocabulary, this new language into an organization, you do have to put some effort and some energy behind that. It's like any change initiative. And so very often I'm brought in to talk to the whole team at a staff conference, something like that. So that's one way, but I can't be everywhere all of the time. So if you've just got the book and you're thinking, what can I do? Then you need to think about, how can I get this language into people's minds and empower them
Nice.
to go and do it for themselves.
Mm.
It is a beautiful thing when I go back to clients after a few months and we talk again, and people are using the language, and they can say, where are you at? And on the Frost thing, oh, I'm doing React at the moment, I'm working on
Nice.
this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm having a tell session, which is the final step, the T in the Frost.
Mm.
And that, when you start getting that, and when it really works, is when it almost becomes an organic thing from the ground up. And the CEO and the bosses can kind of step back, because people are pursuing their passion. They're seeing things about the business and the way they do things that could be improved, but they're not entirely sure how to do it. So they run it around the cycle, and they get to that tail step at the end, which is where they share boldly their unfinished ideas with a few colleagues to see if they can make it better. And when that happens, and I did this very similar, well, I didn't call it this when I was at Microsoft, very similar thing at Microsoft. And very soon we had people coming, can I do a little bit at the next meeting? Because I've been working on a thing over here. Oh, I'd like to share this. And everybody's coming at it from their personal passion point, the thing that they really want to see improved about the business. That's a massive difference from what is the norm in many organizations I work with, which is people can see things that aren't right, they're not happy about them, and they moan about them at the coffee point,
They
and
do
nothing
nothing.
ever changes.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it is about lots of small changes, and then when you can unleash that, big change is just the sum of lots of little changes. It is as simple as that. So if everybody in your organization makes a little change, ideally every day, but maybe every week, a little thing, over the passage of time, that equates to a massive reinvention of the entire organization.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
where it comes alive.
Totally. And I think, we underestimate how very small actions and small changes can create very small habits that can create very big sort of impact. And I just want to look at open
Mm.
and tell as the two parts of your growth cycle. They're all super interesting, but we don't have time to do them all. But open, you frame it as the curiosity superpower, which, remaining curious is a superpower. But how can leaders operationalize that when they're in high pressure environments and the instinct and quite frankly the culture is to control, not to explore? How would you advise people to step into open and stay there for
Yeah.
enough time for them to be able to get curious?
You know what you just said is really true. Sometimes I will speak to organizers of an event and I'll explain the way that I want to work with the audience and the things I'd like them to start
Mm,
thinking. Some people are really frightened by that.
I can imagine.
The idea of their employees having ideas terrifies them, which is utterly absurd. And
Yeah.
it's, maybe it points to a really toxic culture, or maybe it just points to they're on the early stages of the journey and they really do need to work quite
Mm,
hard at this to get to the point where they start trusting people again.
mm,
I've
mm.
never had an idea that isn't improved in some way by exposing it to other people.
Yeah,
It's
of
as simple
course.
as that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen enough. So open is the first, I call it a superpower because
It is a
it's AI.
superpower.
AI cannot do this. We don't actually know how biologically the human brain does curiosity. So we sure as heck don't know how to sort of program it into a
Mm,
linear computer model. So AI cannot do curiosity or the other two superpowers that are in the book.
mm.
And curiosity is this ability to, I liken it to a child asking why questions. Anyone
Yeah.
who's ever had a child will know they ask a lot of whys. Why do we have to go to the shops? Why do I have to wear shoes? And you're like, oh God, it's shut up, just go, let's go to
Why
the
can't I
shops.
have
But
chocolate before tea?
I know. Yeah, why can't? Why? And but kids do that because they are trying to feel safe in the world
Mm,
and to make sense of it. And there's something happens as you become an adult, you stop asking why because you think, well, I should probably know the answer to that. I'll look silly, won't I?
mm,
So the open superpower is really simple. It's about having the courage to challenge and question the status quo, question what you already have within through the lens of the thing that you're focusing on. What is the change that you think you might
mm,
like to make, and saying why is
mm.
this the way it is, and asking those questions. And this one's in the book, but it always comes to mind. I remember asking at Microsoft,
Yeah.
why is the Monday meeting on a Monday? And people looked at me like I'd
Because
gone
it
mad
says
because it
so in
was
the
like, you've
title.
literally just told us the answer. It's the Monday meeting. No, but why?
Mm,
Why is it on a Monday? And and then I got some blank looks, and then they're like, well, it's at the start of the week. Yeah, but why is it at the start of the week? And
mm,
if you just keep asking why a few times
mm.
about anything about your business,
Yeah, of
you
course.
often discover that there's not actually a lot of substance behind the way things are. It doesn't make perfect sense to everybody. And
Mm,
in the case of the Monday meeting, it was something that the guy 2 generations before me had set up. And so that's what we just kept doing. And it's like, okay, so what else could we do? And that's when you go into the next superpower, which is having some ideas that might address that why. So it's called open because it really is about opening your mind to new possibilities, to realizing that the way things are is not the way they have to be forever and they
mm,
can be changed.
mm.
And
So,
curiosity is a brilliant thing for doing that.
yeah, and you've got to keep it though, haven't you? Because it needs a different headspace to be curious. But I think, for me, it's also the move that we also desperately need to make, particularly leaders at higher levels of organization, from knowing to learning. We're back to, I need to know as opposed to I need to learn. And curiosity, that's where for me
Mm,
it's a superpower,
yeah.
Alistair.
Yeah, it's very easy to become quite annoying when you start asking why. So it does need to be done through the context of this process because
Mm,
a lot of those why questions, you don't need to ask them of other people, you ask them of yourself.
yeah.
And that's what gives you the courage to say, actually, this doesn't make sense. I think we could improve this. And
Mm,
then you can have some ideas about how that might be done. And
mm.
in the final superpower, you can share those with a few people and see what happens.
Which is so I want to come to the tell part because for
Yeah.
me it's about the shift from individual ideas to collective action, of course, which is the scaling part often, but also using the brilliance of other people in that room and what's the most effective way, Alistair, that you've seen leaders share these sort of, I'm going to call them half-formed ideas because we're always a little bit, I think, here's what I think, what do you think type of thing. But how have you seen them
Yeah.
get traction instead of them just dying on their feet or
Mm,
I was going to say dying in inboxes, but I do think people share more than they used to. So
yeah.
hopefully we're getting
Yeah.
more and more new ideas out there that people are willing to sort of put on the table, say, I'm not sure if this is a cool idea or not, but I think
Mm.
it's quite good type of thing.
Well, it takes courage to share an
Mm,
unfinished idea because you think you're going to be laughed at. So some of it is about creating some rules and just
mm,
sort of letting people know that this is kind of where I'm at. This is, this isn't finished, but
mm,
I really, really value your feedback, your constructive thoughts to try to make
mm.
this better. And the phrase that I use in the book is a Marshall McLuhan line: "The medium is the message."
Yeah.
And far too often we have an idea and we just sort of blurt it out in the last 3 minutes of the Monday meeting. And guess what? Everyone's already closed their notebooks and they're out there. The tension is gone.
Yeah.
And it kind of falls on deaf ears. So a really important part of the tell step is designing that tell session in a way that's going to just break the norm for people, and they're going to actually stop and say, oh, this is different. I'm actually expected to have a different, to be constructive and supportive. You don't have to have it in the same meeting room that you always have the meetings. You don't have to have PowerPoint. You don't
Mm,
have to have all of this, the stuff that we
mm,
tend to just do every day. If you're meeting, and I give the example in the book of say time management. If
mm,
you're trying to improve time management of the company because you really think that's a key part of our future success, then you're going to start that meeting at 11:37 under the big clock at the railway station, and you're going to talk to people about time and why
mm,
it's important and
mm,
how the Swiss railways do it, or whatever you've come up with, and then you're going to share some ideas about what you do. So I think for leaders, when you're trying to get people on board with new possibilities, you owe it to yourself and to them and to your ideas to create a different space where those
mm,
ideas can first be aired, so that people won't just receive them as, oh yeah, another idea, I'll put that on my list. No, I really want to make this work. How are we going to do this? So
mm.
that they feel invested in it. And the simple line that goes with tell is yes and.
Yes.
Giving people that simple
Mm,
instruction beforehand, saying, hey, help me out here. I really want this to be positive. So try and start all your answers with yes and instead of no because or no but,
mm,
which we hear so often.
mm,
And the minute you do that and people give it a try, it feels really weird. Everyone goes, oh, this is odd. But suddenly you're saying yes, and that could work if we get
mm,
legal on board. Yes,
mm,
and I know somebody who works in another company who's done that. Let me talk to them. Yes, and it's so transformative.
mm,
And suddenly you get to a point sometimes where the ideas don't just get shot down in flames, they actually
mm,
thrive and get better, which
mm.
is what you need the other people for.
And I also, I work quite a lot with SMEs and scale ups and smaller organizations. And, no budget, constant firefighting, no time apart from delivering product or whatever they're delivering. Alistair, how does Ready Already and this model cater to that context? Because it's the stuff that you have to think about, it's the softer stuff. It's what do you mean? We don't need that. Tell me a little bit about that, how the Ready Already model could cater to smaller organizations.
I it's increasingly it's hard in a smaller organization, of
Mm,
course, because you have less people, less
mm,
time. You're busy, running around with your hair on fire most days, let's be honest. But if all you're doing in your business is getting through the day, going home exhausted and coming back in and going again and again, that is not sustainable. That's probably part of the problem. So
mm,
you do have to create some space for it. You do have to find time somehow. And the simplest thing to do if you need more time is to think about, what should I stop doing first?
mm,
Stop doing something and consciously use that time then to say, we're going to think about something that we can improve. We're going to think about what's next. And I think that's something that is just so simple when you describe it like that, but it's really easy to lose sight of that when you're in a small business because you're just so damn busy all the time.
mm,
So make some space for it, honor the process, and allow yourselves to see the things that can be improved. And then if you're making an improvement, it often and should normally come with some improvement in efficiency improvement over time as well.
mm,
The more things you improve well, the more time you create. So
mm,
it's kind of, you've just got to get onto this if
mm,
you're really stuck in that world of we're just getting by.
mm,
It's hard. And if you're in a small business and you don't have a lot of people to bounce your ideas off of, then find a network, find a small business network, find some people that you can bounce stuff off. I bet they're out there. They're all struggling the same as you, and they'd love to have a coffee on a Saturday morning or something when you're all able to do it, and you can then just chat about what you're working on, and suddenly you'll see you're not alone, and you'll have people who have got your back just
Mm,
as you've got theirs.
mm. And just on that note of, massive change and maybe not having the time to really understand isn't the right word, to really sit with it.
Mm,
With AI reshaping half of today's jobs and the whole landscape, and you know, what can leaders use from the ready already cycle to identify specific things like which roles should be automated versus reskilling, or how much AI should be involved in strategy, or how they should partner with AI? Because I think that's the
mm,
biggest challenge, isn't it? That we need to partner with AI and not necessarily just give it tasks to automate. So
yeah.
if I take your ready already mindset, but also the cycle and the tools that are in your book, what would your advice be, Alistair?
Look, I think AI is an extraordinary tool,
Mm,
but we have to stay conscious to its limitations.
mm,
It is a pattern matching at scale, recognition at scale, and
mm,
it's brilliant, but it's not perfect. And
mm,
so the danger that I see with AI, and it always comes up when I ask people the question, what's your thing? Which is the very first step in the cycle. What do you think you need to pay attention to? Loads of people say AI. I've got to
mm.
get my head around AI.
Standard
And
answer.
so that's great. Yeah, it is, because it's just
Yeah.
there in your face. It's an inevitable change or challenge that
Mm,
you can see right in front of you,
mm,
but you, for whatever reason, you haven't got around to wrapping your head around it.
mm,
So AI is great. If that's your thing, go and pay attention to it, but don't get seduced into thinking that that will do your job or that will take everything away. It can absolutely help you. I tend to think of AI as augmented intelligence,
mm-hmm.
because when you reframe it that way, it's augmenting something that's you.
Mm.
You're still there. It doesn't work without you. You've
And your
got to ask it the
brilliance
right
is
questions, and you've
uh,
got to think about it. So it's an augmentation to your intelligence. Use it through the cycle, but don't just go to AI. I find myself sometimes, I think, what is that thing I need to learn? I'm asking ChatGPT or one of the large language
mm,
models, almost without thinking.
yeah.
And what I encourage in the book is, when you want to learn something new, before you start learning, think about the different ways that you can learn
Mm,
first.
mm,
Because you'll realize there are loads of ways to learn, not just AI, not just Google search or whatever you tend to
yeah.
use. You could go to a conference, you could read a book, you could listen to a podcast. There's loads you could
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
right? So use AI, but recognize it is still only one of many tools, and it will not take your job from you if you are doing higher level value adding processing,
Thinking.
brain
Yeah.
processing, that uses the three superpowers in the book. And if you've got those in your toolbox, you will be indispensable in the workforce forever. It is as simple as that, because AI will never do those things as well as you can.
Mm. It's important though, isn't it? Because we do get stuck in that today is what works and therefore what we know. But as you're saying, it's already obsolete. Like AI tools often equates to ChatGPT for people of my generation. But
Yeah.
there are so many other things out there, and then so many other things outside of AI. So
Thousands and thousands, and there'll be thousands new ones today, and it will go on and on, and it
yeah.
will get faster and faster and faster. So don't get overawed by it, but
Mm,
pay attention if it feels like it's relevant to your business. If you think, even if you, the best place to start with AI is to say, what fundamentally important thing is not quite working in my business? If you're a florist, it might be that you get too many people queuing up at lunchtime or at the end,
mm,
on Valentine's Day, whatever. Think about the things that where you think, I could make more money if I did this, or I could serve more people.
mm,
And then say, well, how could I solve that? AI might actually be somewhere. It might give you some ideas, or it might be part of the solution
mm,
for automating some of your processes. But don't just assume that AI can do that. That's one of many ways of
mm,
solving any problem.
mm. And given the amount of human creativity that exists, and I'm sure, you wrote your book, and then I'm sure you've now had a flurry of ideas. And, if you could add one extra chapter to Ready Already today, something you didn't see as clearly, Alistair, when you wrote it, what would it be?
I think I actually would go back to one of the parts that's covered with personal missions, the sense of direction,
Mm,
the fuel to keep going. I think I'd spend more time on that, because a lot of people that I work with are very enthusiastic, and they get started and they get started. And then they get really enthusiastic about something else, and they get started and they get started. And I passionately believe if you just do this process all the time, it just becomes part of who you are and the way you think. And I'd spend more time on that of helping people to think, how do you go through the cycle again and again and again? Sometimes it might take you a day, sometimes it might take you 6 months, but just keep doing this simple thing to unlock things. And every time you do, you should, all being well, get one small improvement to your business out of the other end. Some of them might be big improvements, but don't go into it with that expectation. And it's just having the ability to keep going, to stick with something for once.
Yeah.
And it really will yield results.
Yeah, you're right though. It's the expectation management, isn't it, that we have of ourselves, and then if you use it with your team, that the team will have of what the results should look like. So,
Yeah.
this whole thing of letting things emerge, which is always difficult. But if one of our listeners, for example, is leading a scale up today,
Mm.
Alistair, what's one ritual inspired by your framework that they could immediately use to, let's say, make being future ready a part of their culture?
I think I would say if you're in a scale up, I would start with follow, which is the natural start of the
Yeah.
process, of course, and the Frost model. But really focus. Don't try to do 17 things, because you'll do them badly. Do
Mm,
one thing really well as best you can. And then so follow is just this really simple thing about looking at making a list of all the stuff that you need to be better at. And there'll be loads of them if you're in a startup or you're scaling your business. There'll be a million things that could go on that list. But write that list, get it out of your head and onto a list, and at least it's somewhere. And then just pick the one thing that screams most loudly at you. Is if of all these things, the one thing I have to do above all others is this, and do that, and just focus on that. Give yourself some time every day to think about that thing until you get to a point where either you've fixed it or you've realized it's not actually what you want to be focusing on. You need to go to something else. Far too often, particularly in AI fueled world where communication is amplifying as well, because there's so much noise coming at us all the time, you get distracted and you get pulled off in different directions. You don't see things through. So find your focus and then work it through the process so that you get to the end point and you get some results. And then move on to the next one. It really is that simple if you want to get the results.
Simple things are the hardest, though, often, aren't they?
They're
To be
always the
fair.
hardest, which is why, that's why the book is such a joy to have written, because I know there are so many people who will benefit hugely from having just such a simple framework.
Mm,
I could have put so many more things in there, but I really dialed it down and said, look, this is the absolute bare minimum that you need
mm,
to do, but it does still work.
mm.
And therefore it's accessible to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I was going to say it's great to read because it's so simple
Mm.
and because you're faced with it's simple.
Yeah.
Try this, it's simple. If you try it and it doesn't work, fine, but try it. So I think there's
Yeah, which
no
is also
hiding, is there, Alistair, from how
no,
simple it can be to
no,
try it.
that's it. Which is also why it's a relatively short book that you can
Yeah,
read in a couple of sittings. Because frankly, I don't want people sitting around reading books. I want them making their future amazing.
yeah,
So crack on with it. Let's get on with it. That's the key.
yeah, nice. Would, I mean, time is running, but would that be your call to action, Alistair, if I were to ask you to leave a final call to action to our listeners around this topic of ready already? What would it be?
Well, Susie, I mean, obviously, as an author, I have to say, go and get the book,
Of
of course,
course,
because
and I will
the
put
book
that in the
is
show
has all
notes.
the
Yeah,
answers in it.
yeah.
But more than anything, just treat yourself to half a day to sort of go through it, think about it, have a play,
Mm,
and start realizing that your future is in your control, and change is not a bad thing. AI is not a bad thing. It's the
mm,
world that we live in, so we've got to roll with that. But it gives us extraordinary opportunities when we accept the permission that it gives us to improve things everywhere all the time.
mm,
Very often, you don't need to ask permission, certainly not to have an idea. You
mm.
might need to ask for permission to make it happen. So have some ideas, feel positive, and pursue your personal mission with the vigor that it deserves.
Nice. I'm going to leave our listeners with that, pursuing their personal mission with the vigor it deserves. Alistair, thank you so much for coming and sharing your
Thank you,
stories, your
Susie.
models, the Ready Already mindset. Where can people find out more about you, what you do, your book, obviously on Amazon, but
Yeah, yeah, books all over the place at the moment. So the book is called Ready Already, and the website is readyalready.me. And that will
oh,
give you
nice.
details. That will give you details of the process,
Okay.
and also show you where you can get the book. But also get in touch with me. I love to hear from people.
Okay. Can they connect with you on LinkedIn or via your website
Yeah,
or
connect
both?
with me
Or
on LinkedIn. I'm on all the major social networks as Alistair Speaks. But my parents gave me a crazy spelling, so good luck with that if you're on the listening on audio. Just try to find readyorready.me.
Okay, and I will put all the links in the show notes so that people can find you more readily, shall I say? Okay, thanks, Alistair. Thanks for such a great conversation.
I've loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for everyone listening, here's my biggest takeaway. Being ready already, in inverted commas, for me isn't a state that you reach once and for all. Thank you, Alistair. It's a muscle. You stretch it, you use it. If you don't use it, it gets stiff. So get out there, question what's working too well, and don't just prepare for the future, but provoke it is the takeaway that I have from your book, Alistair. So thanks again. Great
Love it.
read.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.